I will do this for the rest of my life, no matter what, if the Lord wills, if he allows. That's what I want to do. And then it continued. I kind of realized I was leaving the Baptist tradition, and the pastor that I was serving under was getting pretty sick, and so he was stepping down. We knew the church was going in a different direction. It was just a great time for us to move. At the same time that happened, I met my lovely wife, Anna, and she had got a position teaching psychology out in Oklahoma City, and so I thought that would be perfect. I could continue my seminary studies and continue in my journey. I was becoming more reformed as I was beginning to read and just study and have professors, and that was kind of becoming more and more apparent to me that was really where I was feeling at home denominationally, just theologically. So moved out to Oklahoma City, continued, pastored there, and was in a more reformed church, but still wanted to be tethered to a denomination. It was a church plant. It was great to serve there. But I realized I really wanted to find a denominational home. And honestly, I wanted to find it for my son. My son doesn't have to be CRC when he grows up, but I like the tradition feel of, I like the way in which a denomination traditions someone, shapes someone, and helps them give the resources. So I began to look. I was like, okay, who's Reformed? And I was start narrowing that down. And then looking at creeds and beginning reading. And I kept coming back to this place called Calvin, and kept coming back to this place called CRC. And my wife and I, we've been reading one of the profs at Calvin, and he greatly shaped the way we think about teaching, I think both of us, and greatly shaped the way I think about pastoring, absolutely, with practices. His name's James K. Smith at Calvin. So we kept thinking, and I kept having conversations with Anna, and she's from a Nazarene background, I was from a Baptist, so we're trying to find a home that would be good for all of us, or good for both of us, and little Judah as well. And so COVID happened, and I was being a hospice chaplain at the time, and just began reading, and over probably 3 or 4 years, Jen finally came to that. And so I said, this past New Year, I was like, let's do it. I'm jumping in. I want to be a CRC pastor if the Lord wills it. But in Oklahoma City, surprise, surprise, there was no CRC churches. Didn't exist. So they haven't come that south yet. But the denomination was really great. They started working with me. They said, absolutely, you've been ordained already. You can change your credentials. Won't go into all the details. But yeah, absolutely, let's start the process. And we're really gracious. And we'd already wanted to move back to Ohio, and so then that's when Anna had found a job here out in Mount Vernon, teaching again psychology. And so, as I was joking with the search committee, we're coming to Ohio, whether I'm here or not. We'll be in the great land of Ohio. And so, really, just that's where I guess I'll kind of end it there. That's where I decided, that's the Christian Reformed Church was for us. So, hopefully that was helpful. Sure, yeah.
So the question is, what attracted Anna to Caleb and Caleb to
Anna? We met at a housewarming party when I was in graduate school, and he was pastoring at a church in a nearby town. And that's a fun story. I won't go into all the details. But initially, I was attracted to the way that he was conversing with other people there. He was friendly and seemed really interested in other people, and was really engaging in the way that he was having conversation. And we ended up going out for coffee, and as we talked, I could tell that he really took his faith seriously. He was an interesting conversation partner. He was interested in some of the same things I was, and thinking about how people operate, and he was open in the way that he talked about his own background and his family, and just seemed like an insightful person, a person willing to have good conversations with, which is something that was really important to me. So that was initially what did it, and the rest is history.
Yeah, things are serious now with Judah, obviously. Yeah,
Oh, I guess you have a mic. I
have
don't
a
have to
mic.
pass this
Nope.
to you.
Yeah,
I get to
can-
keep this.
You get to keep it. And
Okay.
Judah can yell into it if he likes. I think, so it's kind of similar. I mean, the sense of when I met Anna and we began to chat, one of the things that really struck me was, A, that she took her faith really seriously, but in a really honest way. Intellectually honest. She was really open to questions. She does not... I remember when I was first serving at Toledo at the Baptist church, she just asked really inquisitive questions, really good questions. Helped me think about my faith, think about myself as a person, as a Christian. And so I think the seriousness with which she engages Christian faith and is open to questions and those sorts of things, that attracted me to her. And just her kindness and wisdom. I mean, those were attributes that, yeah, you want your life partner to have, someone you're going to be with for the rest of your life is really important. So those things were, among many others, those were the initial attraction, if that was the, yeah.
Other questions?
Can you share with us the passing of your father and your brother, how that led you towards chaplaincy?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my dad died in 2015. I was 25 or 24. So that was my first exposure to really having death come close, right? So that was my first real exposure. I didn't know my grandparents very well, obviously from being in Australia. So Dad, when he got pulmonary fibrosis, I actually went back and lived with him, and that was my first introduction to hospice, and the chaplain came out and kind of seeing what happened in there and offering care. So I was always attracted to that as far as that being really meaningful. And then while I was serving at the church, my brother, about a year after my father had passed, he called me, actually a year to the day, he called me up and said that he had ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a neuron degenerative disease that attacks the whole body. And he passed a couple of years ago now, about two and a half. So well, the question was, how did it shape me? And yeah, so I think those things became really influential because it helped me think about my faith in ways that maybe made me take it seriously and recognize, matured me in some sense in that way. And it definitely led me to chaplaincy because I liked the idea of being able to be with people in those sacred moments. I wish someone could have done that for my brother who was outside of the family, who could have talked with him and mentored with him and gone through with those particular sufferings. So I think suffering has a way of, drawing things, and in me, I'm not going to say it was all, drawing good and bad out of you, and I think it's a real shaper. So those things have certainly shaped my ministry, shaped my focuses. It's tethered me, I think, to reality that, things are temporary, and I try not to take things for advantage, to take advantage of the time, so whether that's being with family or doing the job that I love, those things have really helped me focus as well. So, yeah, thanks for the question. I appreciate that.
All right, so the question I think was, what classes will I be teaching? So I teach psychology and counseling right now at Southern Nazarene University in Oklahoma City. We'll be moving, and I'll be starting at Mount Vernon Nazarene University in mid-August, where I will teach undergraduate classes in psychology. My background is in clinical psychology, and so I teach a variety. So at a Christian liberal arts teaching university, you can imagine if you or someone you know attended one of those professors are really Swiss Army knives, right, metaphorically, to be able to teach a broad array of curriculum, but then also specialize in their particular areas of emphasis. And so I'll teach a variety of things. I'll teach introductory classes like general psychology or introductory psychology that a lot of people take as a general education course, even if they're not a psychology major. So in classes like that, I have fun introducing people to how we think about human nature, how the science of psychology and the practice of psychology is helpful for understanding people, and then integrating that theologically with the Christian faith and asking questions about, like, how do we understand ourselves, given that all truth is God's truth, and God speaks to us through science and through the various ways of knowing about human nature, and then also through the Christian tradition. And so I'll do that, and then I'll also teach more specialty classes in my areas of expertise, things like assessment and testing, psychological assessment and testing, history and systems of psychology, which is kind of like a philosophy of psychology class, principles of counseling, where they practice basic helping skills and that sort of thing for those who maybe want to become counselors or social workers or other mental health professionals in the future. So a variety of things. I won't list them all out, but yeah. Yeah, great question. So I do research on compassionate love. My initial research in grad school was on relational spirituality, the way that people's relationships with God intersect with their relationships with other close people in their lives, like spouses and family members and things like that. But I've broadened out to studying the factors that contribute to compassion for others and the barriers, the psychological barriers that get in the way of extending compassion, especially toward outgroup members, people who aren't part of, the social circles we typically inhabit. So I do a variety of types of research with that, and I invite students to do that with me. So I have a research group that helps students learn the process of doing social science research, too. Thanks.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, comfortable most. I'm pretty. I'm definitely extroverted for sure. So I cannot be in an office for too long. So I like to be with people. So I would say that was definitely an emphasis. And I've worked with a wide range of ages. Right now, I'm working with more elderly and people who are facing end of life. And so I think one of the things that I could say I enjoy doing, you can all determine whether it's a strength. I do like teaching. I've done that a little bit at a university locally in town, just teaching New Testament and thinking about context and helping people think about Scripture as a whole, and really thinking about, like, how do we understand this really ancient document today? So I love doing that sort of stuff. That stuff I'm all about that. I hope that comes out in the preaching, but even specifically one-on-one, or whether I was to do group things, no matter the age, I really love, because it's really helped me. I guess that's what it's really helped me. So I'd like to focus on the idea of, like, the Bible can be tough. I mean, if we randomly opened it to Deuteronomy 7 right now, there's some confusing stuff in there, Do not boil a baby goat in its mother's milk. How does that apply today? I have no idea. What does that even mean, right? So, like, being able to engage those questions, being able to work with that, seeing what that means today. I love that sort of stuff. So to be determined whether it's a strength, but that's certainly something I find fun, and then just or enjoyable, and then being with people, and so that really, covers the spectrum of all. I don't think I have a specific age group per se, but being able to be present, that's why I did, and that goes back to Lauren's question too, a little bit of why I chose chaplaincy. I like the idea of pastoral ministry. Yes, there's a preaching component to pastoral ministry, absolutely. There's administrative stuff, there's other things that pastoral ministry, but pastoral ministry is about being present with people. I was reading a quote in Oklahoma. There's a guy who was a doctor, and he said, without the medical knowledge, you can't be a doctor, but without the patience, you're not a doctor. And I think that it directly applies to a pastor. Without people, you can have the theoretical knowledge, and you need that as a pastor, but without people, you're not actually a pastor. You're just it's a delusion. Good question, thanks. Did that kind of help, maybe? I think we got one right here. Yeah. That's a good question. It's Susan? Is that, yeah, Susan? Yes, so I certainly have ideas. I think I'll go back and maybe answer it kind of a roundabout way, if that's okay. So I'm really passionate about connecting with people and helping people understand the love of God through preaching, through counseling, through meeting with people, through that experience that they have with me and with each other. And I think that if the Lord then blesses while I do those things with growth in the community, then that is an added benefit. I think naturally, normally, healthy things grow, but not always. And so there's a lot of farmers in here, so I'm sure healthy things, y'all think those things grow. And so that can be a natural outpouring. And I think, when we think of young people, whether that's, my age, I feel like we're pretty young, right? Or younger than us, they don't really, maybe, any young person in here can correct me. I don't think they really need or want something flashy or cool fog machine in church. I think what they want is connection. I think that what I want is connection with God and with others. And I think that's something that, as a pastor, I would provide because I'm called to that. And so I would not do that. So if that leads to people wanting to connect, then that's fantastic, because I think that's what people truly want, is connection with each other and connection with God. And I think that that'd be my plan, if you will. But that's a great question. Thank you. And thanks for coming. Yeah.
So obviously you've made it clear that you're coming back to Ohio no matter what. And whether you end up here or at a different church, what are some things that you're looking for in a church and a church family?
That's a good question. Well, you want to take that one? Judah, get in here. It's a good question. I think we're looking, and I would think your input will be helpful, but I'll definitely start. I think that, what we're looking for in a church family that we would serve in would be a gracious, close community that desires to serve the Lord and follow Him, as best they can in their settings. We're not, what we're desiring in a service is one that has, or service in a church is a service that incorporates we're really big on a practiced service, in the sense that there's response. It's not just one person having the show. And what did I see today? And I've watched plenty of services, well, a few of y'all online. And what have I seen? Responsive readings where people respond, where there's reciprocal nature in the worship. So I love to see that. So the fact that Jim gets up and does the prayer, someone else leads the worship, Sheila does that, there's people doing the songs. We're, as a congregation, participating in our responsive readings, in the assurance of pardons, in the calls of worship, in the benediction. So those elements are really important to me, and that's something that this church certainly already includes. And so that was important to us, for our family. And then, just a people of God that we're not expecting any church is made up of people that are not perfect, but they're desiring. We want people who desire to follow Him and want to, make His name known among here and elsewhere. Anything to add that would be?
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind is willingness. I think the beginning of a Christian life, well, you preached about the beginning being like opening yourself up to awareness of God's presence and praise. Yeah, and likewise, like a willingness, like just enough willingness to be shaped, like to grow with me, is what I look for in a church family that I want to be a part of. People who have we all have our own baggage and defenses that make it difficult for us to grow and change, but just like enough willingness to be able to kind of start that process, whatever that looks like, and a willingness to be known, which is scary too, but to allow ourselves to be known by other people, because I think that's when discipleship happens, when we can be honest with one another.
That was exactly what she said, yeah. And you see why I married her, yes. I think the other word is openness with that, like open to, which is exactly Yeah, thank you. That was helpful. Yes. Yeah, like myself. Yeah, I would want to be as present. So if I was to come here, my job would be to minister to the people in the church and the surrounding area. And so I'd want to know, I'd want to know the members here, the people who have been coming, and then I would want to be as present as I could be within the community, within, events that happen. I would want to be a pastoral presence. And pastoral presence really only happens in trust, and you can't build trust without being there, without being in places and having small talk and, letting your kid trick or treat or whatever. You've got to be there with them. That's the way that it happens. And so I'm not even a big texter. So, and some people that are younger than me, they don't love that. I'm going to call somebody. That's just me. Or I'm going to go visit them in person. And so I want to be present. And so whatever that would look like, I would want to know I know a little bit about Willard. It's very interesting. But know more about the context of Willard and then begin to make myself known. That doesn't sound right. But just be a presence in the community. Yeah.
I want to add to that.
Sure.
Just based on my observations of Caleb. When Caleb served at a church in Edmond, Oklahoma, which is in the Oklahoma City area, he started this thing. You kind of called it your Unity Project,
Yeah.
right? Like it was kind of informally named. But he reached out to the other pastors of the other traditions, like I think Catholic priests
Yep.
and Protestant ministers of all sorts in the area, and wanted to meet with them and get to know them and see what they were doing, what are the outreach opportunities, what are the ministries that they're doing, and can they get to know one another as friends, so that he could be more active in what was already going on in the community. And unfortunately, more did not respond than did to that offer, but funny enough, the pastor of our current church that we attend is one of the people who did reach out to Caleb, and that ended up being a really great meeting because you made a pastoral friend and
Yeah.
our current pastor out of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is not a question, but just to follow up with that, Willard has a group called WAMA, Willard Area Ministerial Association. It is a group of we spoke about all the different denominational churches that we have in the Willard area, and that we're quite prolific in that. But they have a group called Willard Area Ministerial Association, and they meet on a monthly basis, and it's all of the pastors that are interested in being part of that group attend. I know Mom has gone in the absence of our pastor. So there is that. I just wanted to let you know that that exists here, and they try to do events throughout the year in the area, and working with other churches is something that we enjoy doing as well. So just informational.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thanks. I'm glad they're doing that.
Worldwide missions more than outreach and community. Do those good? World missions.
World missions, did you say?
We support 5 different areas, our development today for this church. Supporting it, how do mission Sundays and
Yeah. Yeah, how would I support a missions mind? So my dad was a missionary, so it's pretty important to me. And that would be, and I would always want to partner with missions. It's very prevalent on my mind. I mean, growing up in Australia, just recognizing, the church global is just bigger than we are, which is great. That's something fantastic. And so my big thing would always want to be partnering, and then bringing that into hopefully heightening our awareness of those needs, and then how we can partner with those needs. And so not everybody was called, like my dad, to go to serve in Australia for 40 years. Certainly that's not everyone's calling. But how can we still partner and be active with, and the people we support, if us come here, it sounds like you support 5 different, I would want to be active in their talking with them, just being an encouragement, getting to know them. What are their, again, same with people, missionaries are the same way. Get to know them. What are their needs? How can we partner with them in apps in real meaningful ways? Sometimes we used to joke in Australia, we would have, now granted we were in a beautiful country, so sometimes we'd have mission teams come out and it's like, what do we do with these people? They're coming out and they wouldn't ask us any questions, so we'd feel like we need to put them to work. And certainly that's good, but before those teams would go out, it'd be great if there was a relationship, at least between the pastors, that we could really generate. What is the needs? How can we help them help us? So just, I think, heightening awareness and letting them, heightening our awareness, and even of the needs that are going on in the world, right? I mean, Ukraine, and I know y'all have prayed for them multiple times, but thinking about, what's happening there. I saw about a Baptist seminary there in Ukraine was helping with needs and asking for prayer and support. And so just how can we as a denomination, as our church, help with what's going on with these real crises that are happening? I think missions is part of that too. It's not just looking at what's happening in our backyard or happening in Willard. That's certainly important. We will pay attention to that. But what's happening that we can be a part of, that we can, send resources to or go to in order to help? I think that would be part of my thoughts, at least, as I think about missions, as missions incorporates, yes, the missionaries we support, the resources we want, the denomination, what they're doing as well, how we can partner with them, but also what's going on in the world and how we can be, God's agents of love for people who are going through horrific things, right? Like Ethiopia is going through one of the worst droughts, I think, in recorded history because of what's going on in Ukraine. So how would we partner to help people who are starving? They can't know the love of God if they're trying to find food and they're dying. So we want to. Anyway, so I'm getting off, but how would we help in those ways? So yeah, is that kind of helpful? Good answering that. You'll go, yeah. Yeah, we could, yeah. Certainly, I'm fine with that, yeah. I'd be great with that. Y'all want to, you can take a trip? Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions that I've talked with a little bit with the search committee and just kind of how I practice with sermons and things. So I thought I would mention that too. So I would be, the way I would preach would be what they call expositional, and you're probably familiar with that. That means the pastor or the person is trying to get the point from the text. So they're trying to make the point from the text. Now, whether I accomplish that today, that's up to you to decide, but that at least is my purpose, or at least my plan. That's right, buddy. And so if I were to come here or any church, I would go through particular books and passages. So that means I wouldn't go and preach in Proverbs one day and Peter the next. I would choose, we're going to go through the book of Mark, and we talk about Mark and its themes and its context, and we would explore that, and then we might go through the book of Daniel, or then we might go through, and or we might go through, but I would always do expositionally through a book. And so I'm not, and sometimes that would change. I might do a topic in the sense like when Advent comes around or those sorts of things, or Easter. But I might plan, right, if I'm going through Mark, I would know, okay, Easter's this date. I'm going to plan to be preaching about Jesus coming in, Palm Sunday on Palm Sunday, but it would still follow that book. So that's really, and I just think it's good to be honest, so then that way y'all know what to expect, and you can either say, oh, we don't want that or do, but that's certainly my mindset, because every Monday and every time I finish a sermon, and I can just start right away. I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going the next week. All that study just accumulates for all of us. We all get to kind of go through and feel like we understand Mark, and we can just really dig into it and then try the next. So I think, thank you, Sheila, for pointing that out. That would be definitely my approach to preaching. And I think if we all think that the Word of God is authoritative, if I think that's our idea, which I know that's one of y'all's values, you really value the Word of God, then for me it makes sense to be expositional, which means I'm going to take the Word of God as my primary source, and everything in my sermon, I'm going to try to drive all my points from the text. I'm never going to try to, now I won't do that perfectly. Again, you can be the judge of whether I was able to do it today, but that's the purpose of what I'm trying to do. So I think that's good to, yeah.
All right. We got most of our questions answered? Nothing else? Everybody? Great. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for doing that, you and Anna both. We appreciate that. And Judah, you had some voice there. We heard it. It's good. We want to hear that more. So please, it is now 11:15, a little after. So if you have food to prepare or get, or just want to hang out, the potluck we're going to plan for around 12. So take off and get your food and come back and have some fellowship time.